Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, we have some really exciting news. Of course, breaks in the case here with the Rex Heuermann case. And if we look at this thumbnail you see on the screen, the 6'6", 300-pound ogre is being indicted for 2 more murders in the Gilgo Beach serial killer case. Rex Heuermann was brought into court this morning. We don't know exactly what occurred, but at 9:30. So he may already have learned his fate in regards to these new cases. If you look on the left-hand side of this thumbnail, Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. Now, one of the reasons, or many reasons this is so interesting, is because Sandra Castilla was murdered in 1993. There she is on the screen. Next to her is a man named John Bitroff, who was also a serial killer who was charged with 2 murders and the bodies found out in Manorville. It was thought that John Bitroff was responsible for the murder of Sandra Castilla, but we have since learned they are now charging Rex Heuermann with this case. The scary thing about this is that makes Rex Heuermann 29 years old in 1993, when he may have started way before that. But this is putting a murder back to 1993 connected to Rex Heuermann. So what must we assume then? What we must assume is that there are more. There are more, that he didn't just start at the age of 29. Now we have it going back all the way to 1993. And very, very scary. And then, of course, what brought us here was the 4 women on the screen. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, known as the Gilgo 4. And now we have these 2 new murders that are connected to Rex Heuermann. And of course, the woman you see on the screen, Sandra Castilla, going back to 1993. And then you have Jessica Taylor on the left of this thumbnail, and Valerie Mack. And I believe this morning the 2 cases that Rex Heuermann was going to be additionally charged with was going to be Sandra Castilla and Jessica Taylor. So now we would have 6 murders connected to this Long Island serial killer. I mean, the Gilgo Beach Task Force, set up by former Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison and Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, are doing a magnificent job. They have the resources, they have the talent, and they have the drive, the expertise, and they're coming up with results. So this is just incredible. And folks, at 11 a.m., Ray Tierney is supposed to be giving a press conference. At that hour, we will go live to his press conference. And hopefully they will release a document much like this 32-page bail application document that explained all the evidence and all of the probable cause they had in this case. And that will educate us and update us all to where the Gilgo Beach Task Force is on this case. Amazing goings on, just an incredible story. And we'll bring it to you from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Story. So folks, hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats, hold on to your wife, hold on to your kids. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off the cuff zone. You're about to enter the Police Off the Cuff zone. there has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Branch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Suspected Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann was to be indicted this morning on 2 new murder charges. At this point, being 10:08 a.m., he must apparently know his fate. He was due in court at 9:30 a.m. As we know, he's facing 4 other charges. We mentioned the Gilgo 4, and this Thursday, of course, today, his court appearance comes after investigators scoured the Manorville Pine Barrens in April. The partial remains of Valerie Mack were discovered there in 2000. And 3 years later, partial remains belonging to Jessica Taylor were also found in the area. Additional remains of Mack and Taylor, who both worked as escorts, were found near Gilgo Beach. Around the same time in April, the search led investigators to North Sea, which is a hamlet in Southampton where Sandra Castillo was found dead in 1993. Prosecutors previously linked her death to Manorville carpenter John Bitroff, the person that you see on the screen now next to Sandra Castillo. John Bitroff was later convicted of killing 2 other women. Investigators then returned to Heuermann's Massapequa Park home, of course, in May, to look for new evidence. Law enforcement previously seized hundreds of electronic devices from the home, some which court documents suggest Heuermann allegedly used to contact and research sex workers. Investigators also seized nearly 300 guns from the home and were seen digging in the backyard in the days following Heuermann's July 2023 arrest. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney is expected to share more details about the new charges around 11 a.m. And we'll go live to that as soon as we get that information. But just I've been covering this case, and just last night we went on live late last night, 10-ish. I'll just say 10-ish. And as I said earlier, the New York Post reported that Sandra Castillo, who you see in this picture, was going to be the second of the 2 indictments today for 2 additional murders. Initially, it was believed to be Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, which were pointing towards additional murders in Rex Heuermann's case. But what we are learning right now, that's not the case. The case is that, again, it's Sandra Castillo, which for all of you people that follow serial killers, all you folks that have been following this case, that is an unbelievable new bit of information, because what it does, it brings Rex Heuermann back to the age of 29. Was that his first murder when he was 29 years old? Well, up until now, we didn't know it went that far back. Could it have gone back to his early 20s or his late teens even? That is part of what must be part of this long-term investigation, because serial killers are prolific. And as was learned, I spoke the other night with FBI agent Bobby Chacon and retired NYPD chief of detectives Robert Boyce. And they spoke about how serial killers change, how their modus operandi changes, how their signature changes, how the staging of a crime scene, and all of those 3 attributes we just talked about are part of this case with Rex Heuermann, because he has evolved. He's evolved because if we believe that he killed Sandra Castilla, there was a different modus operandi. She was an escort, but she was beaten to death. We didn't see that in the other victims, at least the Gilgo 4. So did he change over the years and change his MO, change his signature, dumped bodies in different parts? This is something that is extremely concerning, but extremely interesting to the serial killer experts that analyze these types of personalities. And we will hear again this morning from Ray Tierney in regards to what evidence they have, the additional evidence they have in this case. Let's hear a little bit from Eyewitness News here to break this up a little bit.
Returned to court later this week, and newspaper tonight reporting he's expected to be charged with another murder. So far, Heuermann has been charged with the killings of 4 women.
Well, this news comes as investigators searched Heuermann's home again late last month. Eyewitness News reporter Darla Miles is live in Massapequa Park with our lead story. Darla.
Liz, Bill, these potential new charges come just 1 week after investigators concluded a search of the Rex Heuermann home here in Massapequa Park. And what we learned on Thursday may solve murders that took place 23 years ago, a decade before any remains were found on Gilgo Beach.
The rumors have been swirling for the past couple of weeks since the district attorney's office went back in 2.5 weeks ago and started executing the second search warrant at the house.
2 searches in 2 months, a wooded area in Manorville and the Massapequa Park home of Rex Heuermann. A new indictment against the 60-year-old architect expected to be unsealed Thursday, according to Newsday. And while he's charged in the deaths of the Gilgo 4, 6 of the murders remain unsolved.
Primary focus, again, in that basement, in that vault where the guns were kept, and also that little room. It's about a 12 by 12 room right outside that gun vault.
The new anticipated charges, possibly connected to several April searches of a wooded area in Manorville. The dismembered remains of Valerie Mack were located there in November 2000. In July 2003, the dismembered remains of Jessica Taylor were located in the same wooded area. Then in March 2011, more of Taylor's partial remains were found on Gilgo Beach. In April 2011, more of Mack's dismembered remains were discovered on Gilgo Beach, but she wouldn't be identified until May 2020.
Well, look at these cases, and I'm looking at those 2 ladies right now. Is this part of that? It seems to be.
After the initial search of Heuermann's home last summer, his wife releasing these photos saying investigators destroyed their home.
I think this time they went back in more with a forensic approach to see if they could obtain any kind of DNA or any kind of forensic evidence linking Rex to any of the bodies that have been, reported in the media as missing over the last 10 to 15 years.
As for the Suffolk County District Attorney on any potential new developments,
there were a number of necessary investigative steps that were taken. You pointed out just some of them. And, Thursday, you will see the fruits of that investigation.
So at this point, Suffolk County DA Ray Tierney only saying that there is a proceeding scheduled for Thursday morning. That will be in Riverhead. Rex Heuermann is expected to be there.
So again, what she didn't know, because it was actually even more breaking news, was that this doesn't go back 20 years. This now goes back 31 years to when Rex Heuermann was 29 years old. Because if they have the evidence that connects Rex Heuermann to Sandra Castilla, she was found in Southampton in 1993. And of course, you're seeing John Bittroff on the screen with her. And it's believed that the nexus between Sandra Castilla and Rex Heuermann exists. So that is a disturbing find, because now it shows that that Rex Heuermann started doing this when he was 29 years old. we all feared this. We all feared that he was, well, we know now 29. It could have been 28, 25, 22, 19. Will we find that out? That's why this investigation will be exhaustive in its scope. And when we look at some of these victims up on the screen, the search warrant in Rex Heuermann's house, will it connect the dots to unsolved victims? And this was a few weeks ago, and the answer is yes, it will and has. So what more will we find out when they put the money and the resources into this case? That's Valerie Mack on the screen. And we initially thought that one of the cases he was going to be charged with today was going to be Valerie Mack. And that may be coming. That may be one of the cases that we are going to see Rex Heuermann. They can take their time. The beauty of having him in jail, not going anywhere, is that they can take their time and develop this case. And there is probably, I don't know if you're going to hear his attorney, Robert Brown, anymore, and he's an excellent attorney. I don't know if you're going to hear him say anymore that Rex Heuermann is innocent. I don't know. And of course, as we know in our system, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But there are tractor trailers full of evidence against Rex Heuermann. And the from the psychosexual point of view, excuse me, we spoke about the other night with Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce, retired, and FBI retired agent Bobby Chacon. And it's so interesting is modus operandi and how it can change. And perpetrators, suspects, serial killers are slow to change their modus operandi. However, it can develop over time when offenders see what works and what does not work. And they go with and they stay with what works. So with that signature, what is the signature of the case? Well, one of the signature things, of course, was that he, in the Gilgo 4, he tied up the bodies with burlap bags. And in the Manorville, they were tied up much like how it was explained a hunter would tie up a body. So it's always changing, evolving. And then when we talk about staging, the staging of the crime, well, in the case of the bodies out, Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, we know that he dismembered them and then dumped parts of those bodies in the Gilgo Beach dumping grounds. And that's why this case was so complicated. And that's part of staging. Him killing the bodies in one location, tying them up and dumping them in another, and then dismembering them and dumping body parts in another location is all part of this. And as we mentioned, modus operandi, method of operation, signature, which may be his tying up these bodies in the Gilgo 4 using the burlap bags to tie them up. And then in these earlier cases, 1993, in the case of Sandra Castilla, Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor, tying them up, described tying them up as a hunter would. From the chat, Ann Mullen, I bet he took them in a remote area and turned them loose and told them to run, then hunted them. And I don't know if that's not consistent with what we know about serial killers. Explore Core, hi everyone. Bill, will you be covering the press conference? At 11 o'clock, when Ray Tierney goes live, we will go right to the press conference. I know that's what everyone will be waiting for, and I'm not that, my ego isn't that big that I think Ray Tierney won't have a much bigger audience than me. So we will go right to that. Valerie Curto, it's sick. Yeah, obviously this is not for the faint-hearted following this case or following a serial killer. It's absolutely horrendous. Paige N from the chat, it's so horrendous. Thank God he's in custody. I think there was more involved. Shannon's case. Well, you know, Shannon Gilbert, that's a whole other case. And I'm not going to get into that because that will derail what we're speaking about today. And what we're speaking about today is actually good news in that Rex Heuermann is being charged with 2 more murders. So that's what we want to focus on today. And the fact that there is undoubtedly more that we know about and more that we don't know about.
Hands were cut off when she was found in Manorville 20 years ago. Investigators finding them on Ocean Parkway in 2011. She was an escort working in New York City, reported missing out of Washington, D.C. She was identified by a tattoo the killer failed to fully scrape off her hip.
Serial killers whose motives are...
That is so very interesting. And we discussed that the other night with retired Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce and retired FBI agent Bobby Chacon, that is all part of the staging, that he obviously a serial killer does not want to get caught. So an identifier like a tattoo on the hip of Jessica Taylor, he tried to scrape it off so that identifier wouldn't be there. So all part, again, modus operandi, signature, staging, part of the staging in trying to scrape off an identifier so that Jessica Taylor would not be identified.
are sexual have a fair number of commonalities. One is the desire to inflict pain and suffering.
Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, another dismembered victim found in Manorville, were tied to the Gilgo Beach serial killer or killers. 2 law enforcement sources told me they were tied up in a very cruel way. One saying their leg area was bound in a ball. You'd have to be a hunter to do something like that. The second source said the knees were brought into their chest area. We talked to the second source about 2 men who have been discussed in connection to the Mack Taylor murders. Convicted killer John Bitroff, a carpenter who lived in Manorville and went to prison in 2017 for killing 2 sex workers in the early 90s. And Rex Heuermann, the Midtown architect who allegedly picked up some of his escorts in Manhattan before murdering them. He is charged in connection with the Gilgo 4, whose bodies were intact and bound in burlap. One source said of Bitroff and the Manorville bodies, "We're looking at him very closely, but we're not ruling out Heuermann." The Suffolk County District Attorney, though, is not commenting on law enforcement theories about the Gilgo others. We met him in Massapequa Park when the search of Rex Heuermann's home was finished up on Tuesday after 12 days.
Our investigation, focused on the Gilgo 4. We're going to continue to investigate that case.
This, of course, is several months ago when the arrests were made and they were able to drop first the 3 cases and then the 4th that became known as the Gilgo 4.
Prepare that case for trial. And we have our investigation now has become public, obviously. And also it's broadened. So we're going to look at the other instances where bodies were recovered in that area as well.
The DA said lab experts will now look for trace DNA, blood, and hair fibers in the massive amounts of evidence taken out of Rex Heuermann's house in Massapequa Park. That could take quite some time. The DA.
So again, this report was several months ago. So we're updated now to the point where, well, what happened with the search in Manorville? And what we know about that is that they must have recovered some forensic evidence that they were able to match against Rex Heuermann's home, because they went back to his home, didn't they? They went back to his home And they found evidence potentially. Let's not forget, the medical examiner was on the scene when they did the searches. And so what that means, of course, is biological evidence, potentially blood, DNA, hair fibers, skin cells. Any of those things could have been matched up to the search that they did in Manorville. Just, when you think about technology and the amazing way that they collect evidence, it's just incredible. And what everyone wants to say is, well, why wasn't this done years ago? Because everyone's going to say, well, why couldn't they have done this when James Burke was chief? And is that going to come into the case? We spoke about what defense Rex Heuermann will have, and what other defense can his attorney, Robert Brown, use except point towards police corruption during the James Burke era that sent this case really nowhere until 2 years ago when they established the Gilgo Beach Task Force under former NYPD Chief Rodney Harrison and, of course, current DA Ray Tierney, which really got this case going. Vet Girl, RW Bus, member for 27 months. Thanks. More to come, I think. Vet Girl, you're 100%. That's why we're at the beginning. Well, not actually the beginning, but we're seeing some information, some evidence that really is brand new, that we are seeing in this case, that makes this case just, someone, Sherry Murray wrote, he's a straight up demon. And remember when Rodney Harrison gave that press conference and said, Rex Heuermann is a demon. And he said exactly that. Kathy C. from the chat, Chief Burke should be held liable for neglecting these victims and blocking the case. Well, Chief Burke has got lots of issues, and Pessa, I wonder if he had trophies from these women in his house. Pessa, we discussed that, and I think that the answer to that is going to be yes. I think he probably did collect trophies. I think he did collect souvenirs from his victims. And if you know the psychosexual mindset of a serial killer, they like to go back to these souvenirs, these trophies, as are called, to relive the case, to relive what happened, to relive what they did. And they get a thrill out of that. Many times, serial killers like to go back to the scene of the crime. I wonder how many times Rex Heuermann went back to Gilgo Beach just to take a look at it, to get a huge thrill over that, right? Shiloh Waltz, Northern New York. He had the bodies across the damn street, for holy sake. Well, it was a little bit further than across the street. I think Massapequa Park is probably about 15 or 16 miles from Gilgo, but Shiloh Watts certainly very close, very close. I'm going to go to, there we go.
Heuermann, the alleged Gilgo Beach serial killer, is facing more charges.
This kind of connects a lot of those pieces that we've seen coming together over the last few months, including the death of one victim found decades ago that was only recently tied to the Gilgo Beach investigation. Good Day's Briella Tomasetti is outside the Heuermann home in Massapequa Park, Long Island, with the details. Briella, what are you hearing?
Yeah, Dan and Shani, good morning to both of you. So there are no investigators outside Rex Heuermann's Long Island home today, but one could argue there were certainly signs these new charges were coming. Police were here 2 weeks ago conducting a second search of the home. And back in April, K-9 units spent hours combing through a wooded area where 28-year-old Sandra Castilla's remains were found about 30 years ago. In a shocking turn of events, Rex Heuermann, the accused Gilgo Beach killer, whose name is now infamous on Long Island, is expected to be charged with not just one, but two more killings today at a Suffolk County courthouse. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney declined to talk about those charges, confirming only that Heuermann will stand before a judge at 9:30 this morning.
We'll wait until the court proceeding.
According to Newsday, the disgraced architect has been indicted in the November 1993 death of Sandra Costilla, a Queens woman whose remains were found in the town of Southampton more than 3 decades ago. The paper says he'll be arraigned in connection with her killing and the July 2003 dismemberment death of 20-year-old escort Jessica Taylor. Some of her remains were found in a wooded area in Manorville. The rest were located in March of 2011 along Ocean Parkway near those of another sex worker, 24-year-old Valerie Mack. No arrests have been made in her case. Heuermann was initially arrested last July and pleaded not guilty in the deaths of 4 women: Melissa Bartholomew, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, and Amberlynn Costello. Their bodies were all located near each other on Ocean Parkway and were the first of 10 sets of remains found in the same area between fall of 2010 and spring of 2011. He's been held without bail since then on first and second-degree murder charges. Last month, investigators were back in Massapequa Park carrying cardboard evidence boxes out of Heuermann's home. Law enforcement officials stopped short of saying, though, what they were looking for.
Thursday, you will see the fruits of that investigation.
So quite amazing, all of these things happening. Hopefully we'll get more information. Hang on, folks. Unfortunately, I'm getting some. Okay, I'm sorry. I actually had WFLA. It was going live, and I have that sort of queued up so that we can, when the press conference happens live, we can go live to the press conference. So I'm sorry about the background noise you heard. This case is so fascinating from so many different ways. You know, the things that, you know, they always say real life is much stranger than fiction. Well, I give you Rex Heuermann, and undoubtedly real life is so much stranger than fiction. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And I want to thank Lisa Mitchell for gifting 1 Police Off the Cuff membership. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Also, Kim Alliston, one of our great moderators, for gifting 5 Police Off the Cuff memberships. And I think this is why my channel is growing, because I have great people in the chat, great fans, great subscribers in the Police Off the Cuff family here. And I so appreciate it, everything you guys do. So, folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's free. Give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Share us with your friends and your family. And talk about us. Make comments in the chat. We love that. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel memberships with 5 different levels. And you see these generous folks in the chat donating these channel memberships. And thank you so much to all you guys that do everything for this channel and support it. When we look at this map, I think you can really just think of what this did to Long Island, to the area, to the people that live on Long Island. A serial killer for how many years? Now we learned going back to 1993. And I think we will learn that it goes back much further than that. And when we find out where Rex Heuermann has been, has he traveled to other countries? We know that he, I believe, had some land down in South Carolina. How about when he traveled, just say locally, say New Jersey, Atlantic City? And I know 4 murders that he was suspect in Atlantic City, they cleared him for those. But how many bodies are out there that have not been connected to a killer? And those are the things that we have to be concerned with. We as citizens of this country and citizens of this. Diane Crawford from the chat. Chief Burke didn't want the FBI involved in the case because his own involvement with sex workers. That all came out, though, after his own arrest. Diane, there is no way anyone can defend Chief James Burke in any of his actions. Recently, he got arrested on a morals charge in a park, and I won't spell it out, but yeah, he thwarted this investigation because he was afraid that the FBI would look into him. So as a result, 3 or 4 years of an investigation was stalled under very poor leadership or no leadership with this. Dismissing the FBI from an investigation of a serial killer, just from a perspective of the tools, and we call it in law enforcement the toys that the FBI brings to a case. There's no doubt that you needed them, and you need them going forward. Just you need their money, not to mention their investigative expertise. Look, who do you think does the investigative genetic genealogy tests? The FBI builds those family trees and finds bodies or makes connections to cases that we couldn't do 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And now the technological expertise. Look at this case, the technology involved. The burner phones, tracking the burner phones, the calls going in and out to the escorts. Think of all that. Think the triangulation where they could show where Rex Heuermann was, and they could show one of the reasons Asa Ellerup, Rex Heuermann's wife, was never charged is because, according to their investigation, every time one of these escorts went missing, Asa Ellerup and her children were out of the country. And knowing that they were out of the country, many people think that the place of occurrence for these murders was inside Rex Heuermann's home, potentially in the basement. Is that what the investigators found out in Manorville? Was that the nexus? Was that the evidence they found in Manorville that led them to go back to a judge and get an additional search warrant for the Heuermann house to go back in there because they wanted to show a nexus between the evidence recovered out in Manorville and potentially the evidence recovered from Sandra Casilla right here? Is that because we all expected this was a curveball, for me at least, last night when I found out the second murder being charged was not Valerie Mack. It was Sandra Casilla and Jessica Taylor, who you see up on the screen. So all these new things, we may not have we don't have all the information now, but hopefully at 11 o'clock, when we go to the press conference with Ray Tierney, we're going to learn things. We're going to learn things from that press conference. That's going to be incredible. And on the screen right now is Robert Brown with Rex Heuermann standing in court. I wonder what his strategy will be now. Will he change? Will he change the public persona that Rex Heuermann is innocent? He maintains his innocence. That's an attorney's job. But we all have to think about these victims up on the screen. And as the dogged investigators from the Gilgo Beach Task Force keep working and keep recovering evidence and keep analyzing evidence that's already been collected, it's a very, very powerful tool. You see up on the screen, Rex Heuermann accused Gilgo serial killer. What defense strategy will his attorney, Michael Brown, come up with? Well, I think he's got to sort of go away from that Rex Heuermann is innocent. He maintains his innocence because the evidence is saying otherwise. And as we know, in this country, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, even when there's a ton of evidence against them. The other night, Chris Cuomo had Jim Clemente on, probably one of the best serial killer profilers in the world, former FBI. And he had him on his show, and I had him on my show a while back with Bobby Chacon and Jim Clemente. Both of them used to write for the forensic crime show Criminal Minds. Two brilliant guys. So I want to play a little bit of Chris Cuomo. I think Chris Cuomo was enamored a little bit with Jim Clemente. Kept calling him handsome, I don't know. But let's play this here.
Retired FBI profiler Jim Clemente investigated this case back in 2011. Good to see you, handsome. Once again, you can echo this. This became part of the mythology of this part of the country, and now they seem to be solving these. What's your read on this attachment of another body and this big search and what it could mean going forward?
Well, Chris, as you know, during the initial search, there was literally thousands of sources of forensic evidence from that home and from the beach and from the woods. So I think they're constantly thoroughly going through that. And when they get a match or when they get an indication that there may be more evidence, that's why they did the search warrant at the house again.
Jim, help me be fair about this. When you dig up a house the first time, like the way they did, then you go and dig it up again a second time. Is that unusual? What triggers that?
Well, it is unusual, but it could very well be that some of the forensic evidence that the medical examiner found, for example, it could be knife marks, it could be the marks from tool marks that were used to dismember these bodies. Sorry for being so graphic, but basically they could be going back to look for the tools that were used to make those marks. They can match them one to one.
Does it make sense to you as a profiler that Heuermann could be connected to Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, dismembered, both of them, bodies found in parts in different places? Both were sex workers like the Gilgo 4, even though the other bodies weren't necessarily seen to have been dismembered. Does this make sense to a profiler?
Yeah, well, dismemberment sometimes can be part of the MO and signature, but it could also be a practical move. In other words, at that point, he may not have been able to transport the whole body or to the place where he wanted to. In other words, he may have gone to a secondary location, let's say in the woods, but didn't want, knowing that people also often get found in the woods, didn't want them to be identifiable. So then later, when he had the opportunity, he took those body parts to the other location where they were a little bit better concealed.
Now, you guys are very lucky at home that we got Jim Clemente on tonight, not just because he's good looking, but he knows the history of this case. And there's a very weird twist in this case that we told you about early on. But one of the reasons that there were no answers early on is that when the FBI wanted to get involved in this case and really take it on, the then police chief didn't want them involved. And the suggestion was because he thought they were looking at him. And he had some little dirty deeds of his own, allegedly, that he didn't want to come up. Now, Rex Heuermann's lawyer is saying, I'll tell you who killed Jessica and the other one, the chief. And he's saying to the FBI, let's look at him again. Do you think that's a ruse?
Well, I mean, obviously it is. I think, defense attorneys will do whatever they can to muddy the waters. But he's saying that the chief's antics may have let the real killer get away years ago. In fact, maybe that's true. But the real killer is Rex Heuermann. And all the evidence points to that, allegedly, at this point. He hasn't been convicted yet. But all the evidence points to that. And for the defense attorney to try to reach that far, it really says that he realizes the case against Rex is pretty strong.
Do you believe there will be more bodies connected to this man? Oh, you don't hear me, Jim?
Real television.
Boy, it's a great cliffhanger. All right.
I hear you now.
I'll see you next time.
Sorry.
Oh, you hear me now? Do you think they're going to connect
All
more
right,
bodies
take
to him?
care. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. All right. Thank
I
you
think
very much.
The
Appreciate
ritualistic behavior sticks to
Yeah.
all of them. Thank you.
So amazing, right? So Jim Clemente, as I said, probably one of the best. I'm not going to say the best. Certainly one of the best serial killer profiles in the world. And you heard him say that he believes that Rex Heuermann has more bodies. He didn't conjecture how many, but he believes that. Anna Lizette from the chat, sex work is legal in Nevada, but not in all counties, including Clark County, Las Vegas. However, my friend drove taxi in Las Vegas and took men to gentlemen's clubs, which offered female companionship. Some of you guys in the chat are talking about if sex work was legal, would these killings still have happened? And the answer is yes. Who he targeted had to do with his psychosexual behavior, but he would still be a killer, even if he wasn't killing escorts. There's something in his DNA, something in his warped mind that makes him want to take people's lives. And that's where he gets his excitement from. Is it sexually related? Yes. Yes. Is the fact that he targeted escorts part of his mental makeup? 100%. You go back in history, go back to Jack the Ripper in London, so many years ago. Why did Jack the Ripper target women of the night, girls of the street, as they're called? That was part of his psychosexual makeup. And we back then didn't know what we know now about serial killers. Betty Brown, sex workers still not usually as missed by other adults in family. Well, that's true. When they're not connected to a family, a solid life, friends, that they can go missing and not be reported missing for a while. And that makes it much more difficult to discover who killed them. Think how, when this case first started, when they discovered these bodies, the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, I won't say his name at the time, was denying they even had a serial killer. He was denying it. Like, well, what do you need to convince you that this is the work of a serial killer? So Paige N from the chat, it is such evil. Absolutely. You can absolutely call this evil. This is evil. Anna Lizette, in Jack the Ripper's time, prostitution was legal for women to do. It was illegal for a man to profit from her earnings. Okay. I wasn't, I don't really know the history of it, but, I want to play a little bit of Brian Enton. He's always excellent because we're waiting until the press conference, which is supposed to start at 11 a.m., but we don't know if, in fact, it's going to start promptly. So let's go to Brian Enton from News Nation.
Long Island now with surprising new developments today in the Gilgo Beach murder investigation. Police were back at the home of accused serial killer.
Of course, this is in May when they went back after the search of Manorville, and they secured another search warrant for Rex Heuermann's home. So I just want to make sure this isn't breaking news. This was a couple of weeks ago.
Rex Heuermann conducting a new search of his Massapequa home. The medical examiner was seen arriving at the house, and large bags of evidence were observed being removed from the property. It's been very, very active all day. The search comes nearly a year after police arrested 60-year-old Heuermann for 3 of the Gilgo Beach serial killings. A 4th charge then came in January. Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to the murders of the so-called Gilgo Beach 4. After his arrest, police did a massive search of his home. It lasted nearly 2 weeks. His wife complained investigators left the place a wreck. You'd think if there was evidence in that house that they would have found it back then that they were done. They were there for 2 weeks. So what is left for investigators to look for? We've got News Nation senior correspondent Laura Ingle. She's been outside Heuermann's home all day. She joins us live from Massapequa Park. Laura, I was getting ready this morning. I put on News Nation. I heard you on the phone with Marnie racing over to the house right when you got the news about this search. You've been covering this since the very beginning. It was even a surprise to you. So apparently no one really saw this coming.
No one saw it coming, Brian. This was definitely a surprise to many who have been following the case, except, of course, for the Gilgo Beach Task Force, who obviously have been working on putting together this probable cause affidavit and search warrant. And we didn't think that this was going to be happening anytime soon because everything has been so quiet. And like you mentioned, the police were here for almost 2 weeks. Investigators, crime scene techs last year, taking out truckloads of evidence all throughout July. And then things have been quiet. But just recently, there was this massive search in an area called Manorville here on Long Island. It's about 40 miles east from where I'm standing now in Massapequa Park. I've got Rex Heuermann's house right behind me. Before I show you that, I just want to say that search that happened last month was in this wooded area, and it's where two victims were found in this case, two of their body parts, I should say, Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor. So that has always been an area of concern. The investigators were back there. Could that have something to do with what we're seeing here? In the last court hearing that we had of Rex Heuermann, they talked about how they had to now go through 422 electronic devices. Whether or not how new those were to the police investigators, we don't know, but they said they've got to go through a lot. So was there a tip on one of those electronic devices? Let me push in and have our cameraman Art show you before we get blocked off again. You can see investigators are still here on the porch of the home, going in and out of Rex Heuermann's home. We know that his estranged wife, Asa Ellerup, has been living here with her two adult children ever since Rex Heuermann was arrested last year. And she herself had said that the whole place had been turned upside down. I mean, we're talking about cutting out bathtubs, cutting out the pipes of the sinks, going through the mattress, tearing the mattresses apart. They really did a number last July. So now, as we have been standing outside all day long, we've been watching these huge evidence bags, the brown ones, the bank boxes, the white ones coming out. And these investigators have been coming out and going under those white tents that we've shown you throughout the day from the air and from the ground. There's tables underneath, and I've seen people go in there with clipboards, and it looks like what they're doing is doing kind of a rolling inventory of what they're pulling out. At one point, I saw a police investigator go in with a hand truck, like a hand dolly. So what is so heavy that they are looking for that they would need that? Remember, back when this all began and we learned about some of the details of the things that were inside of his home, we heard about some kind of a vault that he had, like a gun safe that was in the basement. Many people, called it a room. It was so big. We know that they cleaned it out. We just don't know if they've been able to move it out. So that could be something that is being looked at. And of course, we all go back to the fact that he is an architect. Did he build something in the house that has a secret compartment of some kind? That's something that's being talked about as we stand outside tonight. Brian?
What a great shot you've got there, Laura. And it's still so active with the police even going in and out now, almost 6 o'clock tonight. Last time you said they were there 2 weeks. Makes you wonder how long they're going to be out there. Again, Laura Ingle, thank you. We appreciate the report.
Thanks so much.
So that was a report, of course, in May about when they started the second search of the house, which was just unbelievable. I want to thank some of the people in the chat. Lisa Mitchell, thank you for the $10 super sticker. Very much appreciated. Jane C., thank you so much for the $1.99. Kevin Callahan for the 5-pounder. Thank you so much. And Shiloh Watts for the $4.99 super sticker. Guys, thank you so much for your support. It's very, very much appreciated. And it keeps, of course, this show going. And it's just an incredible this is an incredible story. It really is an incredible story. And I'm constantly checking now to see when they go live. If one of you guys in the chat sees the press conference go live before I am, let me know about it. I'll go right to it. At this point, again, to recap, Rex Heuermann this morning has no doubt been apprised of the fact that he's being charged with 2 more murders. The 2 more murders we believe to be of Jessica Taylor, who you see to the left in this thumbnail. We expected one of the cases to be Valerie Mack. However, that has not been the case. Valerie Mack, that could be an additional charge later on, but right now, he was being charged with Jessica Taylor, and also this was sort of out of left field, Sandra Castilla, who you see up in the thumbnail on the screen next to John Bitroff, who was a serial killer who was arrested for 2 other murders. It seems like, we talk about serial killers, that Long Island is a fertile ground for serial killers. It seems like there's been more than other areas you hear about. Wayne Randalls, thank you for the $7.99 super sticker. Much appreciated. Guys, this case, this is a, I guess, sort of a groundbreaking case in the world of true crime, in the world of serial killers. And as we always say, there is so much true life, much stranger than fiction, as we say. True life is happening. It's happening, and we learn about serial killers. We learn about their habits, and we learn so much from this case about Rex Heuermann. And it's very scary that he was but he was able to commit these crimes for so many years without being apprehended. Just incredible. And we see the 3 girls up on the screen. It's just absolutely incredible. I'm just trying to search some of the other channels. Once they go live to the press conference, I want to be on it, and we will, as I said, as soon as that happens, we will go to it. We hope that they publish a document like they did when the arrest came out, the bail application document that had 32 pages of unbelievable information that sort of outlined the case that the Gilgo Beach Task Force had against Rex Heuermann. And in that, it outlined his use of burner phones, the calls that he made to the escorts, the fact that he made threatening and taunting phone calls to the sister of one of the victims. Just all part of who this serial killer Rex Heuermann is. Threatening. Is that how he gets his thrills also? Threatening family members of his victims, telling them what he did to the victims. I mean, that's such sick stuff, right? Really outrageous. Grungasor. I live in Suffolk County. They caught this guy. It's still so unreal. Absolutely, it is unreal. Great work, but it took a long time to do it. It took a long time to apprehend Rex Heuermann. And if you're just tuning in, one of the things we learned is that the woman in this thumbnail, Sandra Castilla, her murder occurred in 1993. So that brings Rex Heuermann back to committing murders. If they have the evidence, if they have the connection between Sandra Castilla and Rex Heuermann, that brings him back to the age of 29 when he first started committing these murders. Just absolutely horrific. Walter Seastrand from the chat, do you think his brother could be charged for keeping the green tick on his property in South Carolina? Something, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to look to charge him if they could find a nexus between that he was attempting to hide evidence, or then potentially they would, but that would sort of muddy up the waters, and they have so much information. Their target in this case, of course, is Rex Heuermann. And that's who they're after. And I think if they went after his brother, I'm sure they attempted to interview him, but as I thought I heard that his brother immediately invoked counsel and wouldn't be interviewed by the FBI or the police. So they probably got very little information from him. From the chat, City Kitty Girl, how was he raised? Must have been some bad things. Well, all of that will eventually come out. I'm sure there's already an investigation into his background. We know that that house is the house he grew up in. So he bought that house from his parents. Beady-eyed Beth from the chat. I think Rex gets a power trip from inducing fear. H. Cook, they're gathering at the podium. Okay, let's see if we can. I'm still not seeing it go live yet. News Nation, I'm up on them. When it goes live, we will go right to it. They have people standing for the press conference, but no one's speaking. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see when they bring them up to the scene. Even WFLA isn't live on it yet. They're saying stand by for the stream, so they haven't yet gone live yet. So as soon as they do go live, we will go right to it. They're gathering at the podium. Daryl A, just curious, does anyone know what his mother did for a living, especially after the passing of Rex's father? I don't know that. Unknown. Lisa Mitchell, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. Was Rex Heuermann married before he married Asa? Lisa, yes, he was. I don't have a lot of information about his ex-wife, but yes, he was once divorced before he married Asa Ellerup. So that happens to be true. So again, there's no, we haven't gone yet. JB has the feed. Okay. I'm not seeing, I'm not even seeing JB go live yet with this. Let's see. Okay, they're just about. I could see that they're standing around, but no one's talking yet. As soon as the Ray Tierney goes to the microphone, we will absolutely get right on it. That's what we're all here for, is this press conference, which is, it should be so interesting. Let me see. Again, no one up to the microphone yet. Again, as soon as we get this is groundbreaking. This is just unbelievable information in this case. This Gilgo Beach task force that was started by Rodney Harrison, former NYPD chief of department, and Ray Tierney, the Suffolk County district attorney. It was what was needed at the time. Going to this this task force model, the Suffolk County Police, the FBI, the New York State Police, the Suffolk County DA's office investigators, the Suffolk County Corrections investigators that were able to interview escorts, interview workers in the jail, so that we would see and hear from these workers, did any of them have encounters with Rex Heuermann? So important to this investigation. And that information, of course, would be shared with all the investigators. And having investigators all on the same page, all working together and not apart from each other. In investigations like this, it sometimes happens that investigations hide information even from each other. And I believe that this investigation, they made sure that didn't occur. And they made sure that everyone was on the same page, because that is what happened before they established the task force. And now you can see the fruit that is being born from this task force and the fantastic work they are doing. Just absolutely unbelievable. And folks, we're waiting for Ray Tierney, the Suffolk County DA, to come to the microphone. And we expect him again to talk about the 2 additional indictments for murders in this case. The one victim being Jessica Taylor, who you see on the left of this thumbnail on the screen, and the other being Jennifer Castilla, who you see on the right part of the screen, who was killed in 1993. So if this in fact is connected to Rex Heuermann, he was 29 years old at that time, because it was 31 years ago, and Rex Heuermann is 60 years old. I know you guys are impressed with my math. How did I figure that one out? Must have needed a calculator. So that in itself is scary. It's a scary situation that he started doing this when he was 29, and potentially much sooner. We don't know. We don't know when he started, but that now sets a new level of when Rex Heuermann started killing. And now it goes back to 1993. And could it go back further than that? Absolutely. You know, when psychologists analyze Rex Heuermann, they look at his personality. The loner, big, sort of ugly guy that didn't have a lot of friends. We don't know any of the history everyone wants to hear. Did he kill animals when he was a kid? Because that's always, people always think of that as a sign of a serial killer. City Kitty Girl, thank you for the 149 super sticker. Much appreciated. It's starting. It started. Okay, let me get this off the screen. Okay.
Sandra Castilla, and the 2003 murder of Jessica Taylor. So that's in addition to the previously charged murders of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, which occurred in 1997, 1999, June of 2010, and September of 2010, respectively. So my intention now here today is to discuss those charges, discuss the contents of the bail letter, and then turn it all over to you all for questions. But before I do that, before I discuss the indictment and the developments in the case, I want to thank our law enforcement partners, many of whom are here today. First and foremost, I want to thank the Suffolk County Police Department. My understanding is Commissioner Waring was unavailable today. I spoke with Rob, but he certainly brought a contingent of Suffolk County PD to represent his office. We have Deputy Police Commissioner Kevin Catalina. We have Chief of Detectives Daryl Simmons. We have Deputy Chief Stan Grodsky. And then we have the commanding officer of the Major Crimes Unit, which includes the Homicide Unit, Sean Barron. So we want to thank all of them for their partnership. We want to thank the Homicide Unit for their continued efforts in this case. We have the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office here. Again, spoke with Sheriff Toulon. He's traveling out of state, so he couldn't make it. But it's my understanding that Under Sheriffs Steve Kios and Keith Taylor are here. We certainly want to thank them for their assistance as well. With the New York State Police, we have Major Stephen Udis, as well as Lieutenant Ken Gine. Again, we thank them not only for their presence here today, but more importantly, for their partnership in this case. We have the FBI, Supervising Special Agent Don Ansbacher is here. I want to thank the FBI for their continued assistance in this case. And then I don't believe they're present, but we have we want to thank the United States Secret Service for their assistance in this case. We want to thank the Suffolk County Crime Lab. I know they're not here, but their work has been tireless and instrumental, and we are really very appreciative to them. I especially want to thank the K-9 units from the New York State Police, from the Suffolk County Police, and from the NYPD, who came out a couple of weeks ago, and in very difficult conditions. They really did a fabulous job helping us to search an area of interest to us, and they went above and beyond. So again, I want to thank them. I frequently neglect to thank my own team, so I'm going to take the opportunity to thank them. We have, Chief Zacharies. We have. I want to thank them. I want to thank our ADAs, many of whom are working on this case. You heard from Nick Santamartino. We've got Larry Opizzo. We got Andrew Lee. We got Michelle Haddad. We've got a whole host of ADAs that have really been instrumental in us. Our investigators, our analysts, really fantastic work that they've done. I want to thank the victims' families, many of whom are here today, not only on the new charges, but for the original Gilgo 4. And this is what this case is about. We don't ever forget that. This case is about the victims and their families, and hopefully providing them with that small measure of closure. And the families have been nothing short of incredible. The way that they continue to support their loved ones and each other is really inspiring to us, and really helps us to keep coming in and working this case as aggressively as we've been doing. This case is a true collaboration, and again, mentioning all of those partners, without the contribution of any one of those partners, our ability to do this case would have been severely compromised. So again, I know I mentioned a lot of names. I know I went through a lot of agencies, but I just don't do that because it's the polite thing to do. I do it because it's the right thing to do, because they've really helped us instrumentally and will continue to help us going forward. Now, I'll just, before I get into the individual murders, the two new charges, what I want to talk about is at the time of the initial arraignment of the three out of the four Gilgo 4, and then at the superseding arraignment on the charges pertaining to Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and the Gilgo 4 was completed. At that time, we said that we were going to continue to investigate this case, that the grand jury with regard to the Gilgo 4 is over, but the case continues. The criminal prosecution continues, but the investigation continues, and that investigation has been expanded. The investigation has been expanded both to the bodies that were found on Gilgo and beyond. That's what we said. And I think that has come to fruition today with these two new cases or new charges. First off, with regard to Jessica Taylor, that her body was recovered on July 26th in 2003 off of just west of Halsey Manor Road in Manorville. She was found on her back. She was decapitated, and her hands and arms were severed just below the elbows. Notably, a tattoo that she had been obliterated with a sharp object. 8 years later, her arms and skull were found on Ocean Parkway. Those remains were found on the same side of the road on the Ocean Parkway as the Gilgo 4. They were found less than a mile away from the remains of the Gilgo 4, and all of the 5 remains were located within 50 feet of the roadway. And I think you see that the graphic on page 5 of our bail document illustrates that. Jessica Taylor was last seen on July 19th in New York City. She was working as a sex worker. We know from from our investigation, from a number of financial records and other records, that the defendant, Rex Heuermann, was in New York City on July 19th. Jessica Taylor last spoke to her mom on July 21st, and then that was about 8:41 p.m. Then less than 2 hours later, her phone call made its last outgoing call, and we heard no more from Jessica or from her phone. The family alerted law enforcement on July 25th when she failed to return to her home for her mom's birthday, and then shortly thereafter, on July 26th, Jessica's body was recovered. At that time, the Suffolk County PD did canvass. They spoke to witnesses, and the witnesses had observed the night before, about 13 hours prior to the 911 call, they saw a dark-colored pickup truck backed up in the vicinity of off of Halsey Manor Road, where Jessica's body was eventually recovered. Computer activity by the defendant, which we were able to access through our search warrants, indicated that 2 days later, on July 28th, he accessed a Newsday article with regard to information on the case and with regard to the police looking for information on the case. That search was erased, but we were able to recover it. 1 day later, on July 29th, notably, the defendant was seeking to purchase a new Chevy Avalanche truck, notwithstanding the fact that he already had a dark-colored Chevy Avalanche truck, which was only approximately 4 months old at the time. The Chevy Avalanche truck, which we've been discussing all along, is dark-colored. His internet search related to the acquisition of the same Chevy Avalanche truck, but this time in white or bright blue, bright-colored truck, completely different from the dark-colored truck that he'd been riding in. And again, once again, that purchase with regard to the new trucks that was attempted to be obliterated. We spoke, and Nick Santamartino did the bail application, so I don't want to repeat all that Nick said, but with regard to the hairs found in this case, Jessica Taylor was found laying atop a surgical drape. A male hair was found between the body and the drape. That was recovered back in 2003. In 2023, we brought that hair was brought to the mitochondrial testing lab for mitochondrial DNA analysis, and was able to the result. 99.96% of the population, but not the Rex Heuermann, the defendant. Then again, later in 2024, we brought to a second lab for testing. And once again, the result was the defendant could not be excluded as the donor of that hair, and it's 1.837 times 10 to the 603rd power, more likely that it came to, that it matched the defendant or someone matching the defendant's DNA profile than a member of the population at large. And that number, just so it's 1.837 times 10 to the 603rd power. So what you do is you take that 1.837 and you move that decimal point over 63 places and add zeros. That's the number. That number doesn't exist. It's so big. Among other things that we were able to establish with regard to the murder of Jessica Taylor was, once again, family travel. We were able to determine that at the time of the disappearance and death of Jessica Taylor, once again, the defendant's family was out of the state. They were staying at a resort known as Smuggler's Notch in Vermont. We were able to corroborate that information through witness statements, photos, and phone and financial records. In addition, there was a hard drive that backed up to a Palm Pilot, which was the defendant's date book. And in that, and again, this is chronicled in the bail application, but in that date book, it's indicated that his wife is in Virginia at Smugs from July 20th through July 27th, and that's page 14 of the bail document. With regard to the 1993 discovery of Sandra Castilla, again, on November 20th, 1993, two individuals while hunting in that wooded area of Southampton in the vicinity of Old Fish Cove Road in Northsea discovered her body. She was lying on her back with her arms outstretched over her head. Her legs were uncovered and her shirt was pressed over her head. The defendant, the victim suffered numerous sharp force injuries, 25 in all, which we believe were post-mortem. And these were injuries to her face, torso, breasts, left thigh, and in her vaginal area. Once again, we had hairs recovered from Sandra Castilla. This is chronicled in the bail application. There were 2 hairs from Sandra Castilla's remains that are of particular significance in this case. One was a female hair that was recovered from the victim's right arm, and one was a male hair that was recovered from a tape lip of one of the shirts that the victim was wearing that was pushed above her head. In 2014, about 10 years ago, the 2 hairs plus another female hair, which were found on Castilla, were sent to an outside mitochondrial DNA lab for testing. And at that time, John Bitroff was excluded as the donor of those 3 hairs. Those once the task force began investigating Gilgo and related cases, those hairs were retested in 2023 and 2024 and compared with the defendant's known sample from the buccal swab that we obtained. Regarding that male hair, the mitochondrial DNA profile developed from that male hair on the victim Castilla and the profile developed from the defendant's buccal swab are match, and specifically at a rate that would exclude 99.96% of and defendant Heuermann cannot be excluded as the contributor of that male hair on Castilla. In March of 2024, that same male hair or extract therefrom was brought to the same outside lab for nuclear DNA testing, and once again the results came back, and which found it was 4.347 times 10 to the 332 power more likely to have come from a person genetically identical to Rex Heuermann than from an unrelated individual. So that's 4.347, and then you move that decimal point over 332 times to get the odds. Again, an astronomically large number. Regarding the female hair, prior to with regard to the female hair, one of the female hairs that was recovered on Ms. Castilla, prior to Ms. Castilla's disappearance, the defendant had been living with a female individual at his home in Massapequa Park. The female individual lived with the defendant at his current residence through the summer and into the early fall of 1993, and vacated the premises approximately 2 months or so prior to Ms. Castilla's death in 1993. Once we got those 2 female hairs, once we knew of those 2 female hairs' existence, we went out and obtained a DNA profile, a buccal swab from this female. And that DNA profile that we obtained from the female's buccal swab, we sent it to the mitochondrial testing lab. And again, it was able to exclude 99.98% of the North American population as the contributor of said hair, but it could not exclude the female who was living with Rex Heuermann. Again, we brought that same DNA and extract to the nuclear DNA testing, and the female's hair was tested and compared with the female hair that was recovered on the victim Castilla, and it was found to be 4.578 times 10 to the 1040th power more likely have come from a person genetically identical to the female witness who was living with Rex Heuermann in 1993, shortly before Ms. Castilla's death, than from an unrelated individual. Again, that's 4.578, and you move that decimal point over 1,040 places, and that's the number. There was an additional female hair that was recovered in 2014. That was recovered, that was compared to both the female living with Mr. Heuermann and the defendant, and we could not get a match on that, and that remains unidentified, that female hair. So we have those DNA results, and again, we were able to establish, similar to all the other cases, that at or around the time of Ms. Castillo's disappearance and murder, Rex Heuermann was living alone at the house in Massapequa Park and had unfettered access to the house, and no one else was living with him at the time. So now I want to discuss some of the newly discovered digital evidence in the case. Before I discuss that, I just wanted to clarify some of the things that we've been talking about in our earlier press conferences. I was asked specifically about smart devices and digital devices that were recovered from the home and business of the defendant in connection with this case. So I just want to catalog that for you so you get a sort of flavor of what it was. We've recovered 15 different types of cameras. We've recovered 27 computers. We've recovered 58 internal hard drives. We recovered 22 external hard drives or solid drives. We recovered 46 cell phones. We recovered 9 Wi-Fi routers, 44 SD micro cards, which are like jump routers, 17 tablets, 42 USB devices, 8 laptop cards, 4 GPS devices, 11 music devices, 36 SIM cards, 33 miscellaneous items, and 647 CD floppy disks or VSH or miscellaneous tapes. Again, in the months subsequent to the arrest, we've been endeavoring through our own office and with the help of the Secret Service to analyze that massive amount of data. And analysis of those devices has revealed certainly that Heuermann had a significant collection of violent, bondage, and torture pornography, which was dating back to 1994, and that material was very similar to the condition that the 2 latest victims were left in. In addition to that, it is alleged that the pornographic images that were accessed by Heuermann are consistent with the crime scenes of both Sandra Castilla and Jessica Taylor. Now, as part of our processing of the electronic devices, the task force discovered a Microsoft Word document entitled HK 2002 through 2004. That was discovered on a laptop in unallocated space, meaning there was an attempt to erase that document. But as most forensic experts know, that even when a document is erased on a device, it is the user could no longer access that document, but forensic experts using particular software can retrieve it, and this document was retrieved in this case. It was a locally created draft, which means the document itself was created on the laptop. It wasn't downloaded from the internet. The document was modified. It was originally created in 2000, and it was overwritten a number of times and modified between 2001 and 2002. Now, as alleged in the bail application, the task force believes that this is a planning document, and it was utilized by Heuermann to methodically blueprint and plan out his kills with excruciating detail. We allege that this document evinces the defendant's intent in committing the charged crimes, that his intent was specifically to locate these victims, to hunt them down, and to bring them under his control and to kill them. His motivations, meticulous planning, and clear intent is obvious. His intent was nothing short but to murder these victims. And we allege that the methodology, that the exact method by which these murders were committed in excruciating detail in that document is in some cases identical to the methodology used to murder the 6 victims in this case. Now, I don't want to speak further on the document. I believe the document speaks for itself. So if anybody has any questions about the document, I'd be more than willing to answer them. But before turning it over for questioning, I want to reiterate, right from the very beginning of this case, from the onset of the case, the first indictment, we said that the case was not over. We said we were going to continue to investigate the case of the Gilgo 4 and find more evidence. We've done that. We've said that we were going to expand the investigation both on Gilgo and off and to investigate new cases. We've done that. And that's resulted in the 2 new charges that you see here today. So that's what we've done. That's what we've continued to do. And, my office, along with our partners, are not going to stop. This case continues. So with that, I will turn it over for questions.
Mr.
I had a
Tierney, you
question
talked
about,
about-
we'll just go, if you go right to left. About the plan. I didn't see you down there.
It's okay. Because of this web document that he had, planning these murders out, why is it second degree and not first degree? Isn't that premeditated?
So first degree, I mean, there are a number of different charging theories you could use for murder in the first degree. One of them is if you charge a murder within a specific period of time. I think it's 18 months. So if you look at, so we have 3 murder 1 charges and 6 murder 2 charges. And if you look at the time of the deaths, Sandra Castilla, 93, Jessica Taylor, 2003, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 2007, Melissa Bartholomew, 2009, Megan Wardeman, 2010, and Amber Costello, 2010. Those last 3, Bartholomew, Costello, and Wardeman, fit within that one. The other ones, unfortunately, fall outside, so we're unable to bring that charge with regard to those. The other 5, the other 3 victims. So that's why it's different. Just sort of the way New York State law is set up.
I wanted to ask about how this expands the search now, because now with this indictment, the earliest murder now changes to 1993, which gives it many more years than we had before. So how does this expand the search? How are you guys expanding this to find out who other victims that are possibly involved in it?
Well, I think first and foremost, it expands the information for the public and the media. It doesn't change anything for us. We were, I think in March of this year, we learned of this document. We have been investigating other things. So again, my confidence in saying that we were going to move off of the Gilgo 4 to the new body and off of Gilgo itself was based upon my knowledge of the investigation. So that's something that we've been doing for a while now. It's just sort of become publicly known.
How do you know, Sam?
We have no information with regard to it.
Enough of that. So the alleged murders happening between 93 and 2010. Just how alarming is this sweeping timeline you're looking at?
Well, I think this whole case in general is alarming. And I think it underscores that which we already knew, that we have an individual who we are alleging, and again, these are allegations, meticulously planned and executed 6 separate murders. So that in and of itself it speaks for itself.
And there are other victims named in the court documents. Are more charges on the way?
So we're going to continue. Again, we're going to continue to investigate, and we'll talk about whatever other investigation we're undergoing when and if we bring those charges.
And Mr. Tierney, in your document, you mentioned the words torture, bondage, violence, and also Stockholm syndrome. Is there any evidence to reveal that perhaps Rex Heuermann took these women or any of them captive in his home, attempted to brainwash them, put them under his control?
Well, that's what that document contains, and again, that speaks for itself. We'll make arguments with regard to that, and at the trial. The specific reference to Stockholm syndrome that pertains to a book, Mindhunter, by a former FBI profiler, John Douglas. His name escaped me for a moment. And so we know there are specific page references to that book and stuff such as a sexual substitution, torture, and also Stockholm syndrome. And our argument, it's our allegation that the defendant was referencing that Mindhunter book not to gain insight into his own behavior or to modify or change it, but rather to use it as a means of improving his methodology and avoid capture by the authorities.
Was that book found? Sir, what about Valerie Mack? I know she, I believe, was found out in Manorville in a similar way that she was murdered.
So you have, and if you go back to that document, they talk about DS or dump sites, Mill Road, Halsey Manor Road, and Mill Road. It intersects with each other. So, and if you look at the method of the crime scene, very similar to Jessica Taylor. That's what we could say now. We'll continue to work the case, and if we're able to develop more information and get to the point where we can charge it, we'll talk about it. You have a real question?
Yes, I was wondering, you mentioned that book. Did Heuermann have that book in his?
So he references specific page numbers in the doc, or specific page numbers are represented in the document, which match up to a particular edition of the Mindhunter book. The Mindhunter book was not found in Heuermann's house, but there was another serial killer book written by John Douglas found in his house, and I think that's in the bail document.
I just think, obviously, you probably knew this already, but uncovering a lot of new details that we didn't know as far as dismemberment, that he was younger when he allegedly killed, that, of course, this document is explosive. Just talk to me, looking at the bigger picture profile of a serial killer, what was investigators, your thoughts when you were uncovering these new sort of details that
We had no thoughts. We look at the evidence and we follow the evidence. We know that criminals in general, people in general, their modus operandi change through the course of their life. Obviously there was no dismemberment with regard to the original Gilgo 4, but there is with regard to, unfortunately, Ms. Taylor. So, it's just, and again, everyone says, are you expanding the investigation? And we're doing it under the auspices of the Gilgo Task Force. But each new case that we look at, each new crime scene we look at it independent of everything, and then we make a determination. Where does that evidence leads us? Does it lead us to one particular suspect or another particular suspect? But we don't, get a list and say, okay, we're gonna automatically assume that certain people committed certain crimes. That's not the way to do it. That's not the way we do it. We look at and again, in the bail document, you talk about, if you want to know, and this is from John Douglas's book that the document quotes, if you want to know who the painter is, look at the painting. And that is something that Douglas used to tell his investigators. And that pertains specifically to, if you want to know who committed the crime, look at the crime scene and the condition of the victim. And again, if you do that in this case, we would allege that the crime scene and the victims match very much with a lot of first off, the document that we found, and also a lot of the defendant's internet activities and the bondage and torture type of pornography that he was interested in obsessively searching.
Do you believe at this point that the murders were committed in his house? And could you also talk about the note he put in his in that document that was referenced in court?
I'm familiar with the note. I'm sorry.
There was I thought the ADA talked about something about, he said, if you do certain things equals more playtime.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So that is referenced. What is the specific quote? Okay, more rest, more playtime. And so basically, what he's talking about is, well, what the allegation and what we would allege is the more rested, the participants are, the more you can get done. And he also talks about the document also talks about crime scene, and if you're sleepy and spending too much time in the crime scene, or your lack of sleep, your chances of making mistakes increase. So again, there's a lot of evincing of intent in that document.
And what about where these murders took place? Any?
So there's, under some of the considerations was in the document, it writes about tape not good, use push pins. And then once we received that document, we went back into the house and looking at the paneling in the downstairs basement area. We were able to look at it through infrared light. We were to establish cordon off area where adhesive had been placed. So we're going to make certain arguments with regard to that at the time of trial. We also found an area where there were push pins into the drop ceiling.
Does he make any specific references to victims in the manifesto?
There's a T1, a T1 and T2. We would argue that stands for target 1 and target 2. Target 1, it says Megan with a question mark, and target 2, it says black, and then in parentheses unknown, I believe. You could look at the bail document. That pertains to specific victims. If you look at the timing of it, it wouldn't seem to pertain to Megan Waterman because it's too early in time. There is also a reference to phone numbers of potential victims. We've searched, and we usually block out our phone numbers. We kept that in the document because we've come to an impasse with regard to those phone numbers. So if any members of the public have information with regard to those phone numbers, we would certainly be receptive to receive that.
So Valerie Mack, her death was mentioned twice in this latest bail document. Is Rex officially a suspect in Valerie Mack's death?
I think that would be fair to say, yeah.
And is it Mill Road where her remains were found?
Yes. Yeah.
Taylor was close to the
Valerie Mack was. If you go down, you have Halsey Manor Road, and then Mill Road is like further, like as you said, away from the expressway, I believe, or the exit to the expressway. But in that same area, and Valerie Mack was a little bit further into the woods.
Any evidence at all about what he might have been up to in the last decade or so? Or did he just stop in 2010? How many other missing persons cases or unsolved crimes do you now have to look at, given where you are?
So the quick answer to that, yes, we have. We're still developing that, and obviously, none of that is actionable. And with regard to the missing cases, we're looking at all of them, and but we're looking at them not necessarily in the context of any particular defendant, including this one. We're looking at them, separate and apart as missing cases. And with the universe of information that we have, not only in this case, but other cases, how can we work towards solving some of these cold cases?
That's 30 years of time.
Yes.
Did the new search of North Sea uncover any evidence that has helped the case?
So I would say that, it was, as I've said all along, it's a necessary investigative step. It's a huge area, and we felt that we needed to do that at some point in time. We wanted to do it before the summer, and the brush got real thick. So we didn't know logistically how we were going to do it. We knew it was going to be difficult, but you don't not do something because it's difficult. And again, fortunately, our partners in the New York State Police, the Suffolk County Police as always, and the NYPD, their canine units went out and they did a fantastic job. We have so much gratitude to them for helping us out, but no new bodies were found.
Jimmy, just following up on Greg's question, do you believe both the search going on in the basement and what you found in the manifesto, that the basement was the location where the crime occurred?
So again, it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what we can prove. This is, a significant investigative step. This was a significant investigative finding, and we'll continue to develop those things. We'll get to you next. I'm sorry. Did you say that again? Whoever said what they said? You said, oh, sorry.
I was just wondering, in the basement,
Yeah.
it was the new search. Were there any specific findings that could relate to actual blood, hair, human remains of any kind?
Well, as we've said all along, if you look at the DNA evidence and the trace evidence that we've done, it doesn't happen overnight. So there's additional testing that we're undergoing. We just have to see the results of that. Well, we always see suspicious things, but in any case. But is it is it a stain of something benign, or is it an investigatively significant stain? Only our forensic scientists can tell that after a lot of work. Well, we've in our bail letter, we're pretty much constrained by our bail letter to what we could publicly disclose. We found other information, which will be disclosed at the time of trial. So we're not gonna get into it, and that's not to say they exist. We're just not gonna get into it. We can't. Ethically, I'm really enjoying talking about it.
Can you tell us when the document on the laptop was first discovered, and is that what prompted the research of the house?
Again, in any effective investigation, it's never just one thing. Certainly that was something that was significant and led us in among other things in that direction. That document, I believe, we recovered it in March here. So fairly recently, and certainly given the sprawling history of this case.
And you
Go ahead.
said he had a lot of images and videos of torture porn on his devices. Were any of them his own victims?
We saw no evidence of that.
Could you speak about his profile? Like, was one set of murders different from another set, and does that indicate that he was sort of changing his tactics over the years, or is this all consistent when you look at all the evidence so far?
Well, I think if you look at a macro view or a micro view, these are young women tragically lost their lives and were murdered as a result of a person who meticulously planned their murders. If you look at the earlier as opposed to the later murder, it does appear that there was some changes. Exactly what happened with regard to the Gilgo 4, we're foreclosed about knowing a lot of that stuff because they were skeletonized. Jessica and Sandra were more recently found, so we were able to glean more information from the crime scene. So, I guess it just depends what your perspective is on with regard to all that.
Was the March 7th discovery of the Word document the evidence that caused the second search of the house?
Well, as I think I previously, it was a impetus, but in any good investigation, there's usually a number of different things that cause that.
Was it the main one?
I would say it was a significant one, and it was also an impetus to go back out into those areas and search with the dogs. And Manorville and North Sea and every place else we went.
With these allegations that happened probably 93.
This is Suffolk County DA Ray Tierney speaking about the new findings in the case.
So as we said, Karen Vergata, her remains were found partially in Jones Beach and partially in I think by Atlantic Beach across from Blue Point on Fire Island. So all those cases, every person who was tragically murdered in Suffolk County, they're in play.
Ray, can you say a quick word about how you're going to bring this to trial? Are you going to, is there like a cutoff point where you're just going to try the 6, or you're just going to keep going and eventually put them on trial?
So we're not going to stop. We can't stop. We owe that to the victims. That's the least we can do. So we understand we have a court case. We understand we'll go forward with that, but we're not going to stop. So however that works, however we need to do that, we're going to do it. We have a great team. We have a great team of investigators. We have a great team of prosecutors, and you do what you have to do in this business. We will get it done. It's it's daunting. There's a lot, but we'll get it done.
Are you still going through those dozens of digital devices?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's just reading off just gives, and a lot of them are encrypted, so that when you have an encrypted device, that attempt to get in is ongoing. You're trying to crack the code, so to speak. So that's an ongoing effort.
Has there been any attempt?
I'm not going to discuss. I'm not going to discuss that again because my speculation, my thoughts don't matter. What I can prove in court, speak through an indictment, I will talk about these 6 because these are allegations at this point. We look forward to proving those allegations, but they are mere allegations at this point.
Has there been any attempts recently to talk to Rex or his lawyers and say, hey, look, can you just tell us who you killed Just ask him to come forward?
So I am, he's represented by company counsel. I cannot ethically reach out to the defendant, so I wouldn't. And even if I was inclined, I cannot. So we'll speak through his attorney. And, there's in any case, there's always a dialogue between the defense and the prosecution, or at least there should be. And, a myriad of topics are discussed on a daily basis, which should remain private between the parties.
Has any of the evidence that you found so far, that you might have another suspect question, whether someone who lived there or a family member or something, could be someone on your radar?
So if you look at the evidence in this case, and it points that the defendant acted alone, and then if you look at that planning document, that makes it even more apparent that the six charged cases were meticulously planned, and they were done at a time when the defendant knew he would have both access to the victims and other people would not be around.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe the victims are going to speak, so we're going to give the victim, some of the victims, whoever likes to speak, the opportunity to do that. Thank you very much.
This is Gloria Alred, I believe, approaching the mic. She's an attorney for some of the victims' families. Unbelievable press conference. I mean, as far as what we learned, the new evidence, just the technology behind identifying the mitochondrial DNA. I'm just blown away by it. Here's Gloria Alred. We'll see if I stay with this. I may go away from this, the main press conference. I think I'm actually gonna go away from the press conference with Gloria Alred. Let me just see her opening statement, and we may go away from it. You'd think she'd be ready. I mean, she only stood there for about an hour.
Good morning. I'm attorney Gloria Allred. I represent the family of one of the latest victims for whom there has been an indictment of the defendant, and that is Jessica Taylor. I am the only attorney representing the family of Jessica Taylor and the only one authorized to speak about Jessica Taylor. In addition, I represent the families of three other victims, Megan and Melissa and Maureen. Some of the family members.
All right, folks, I'm going to go away from this. I'm not. I don't think this really. The press conference was given by District Attorney Ray Tierney. I mean, unbelievable things that we learned. The evidence, the Microsoft Word document, which he described as a planning document, where he actually planned some of his murders. I think, without saying it, Ray Tierney sort of indicated that the victims, some of them were brought into the house. I didn't say it outright, but there's evidence of that. Now, the modus operandi, which we spoke about, I mean, has changed over the years. And as I said earlier, the scariest thing here is that we now have a victim from 1993. That would put Rex Heuermann at 29 years old when he started committing these murders. 29. So is it a distinct possibility it goes back even further? 100%. Yeah. And I think that is scary. That is extremely scary. And again, I put up on the screen Sandra Castilla, her body found in 1993 in Southampton, Long Island. I believe, according to what District Attorney Ray Tierney said, was the nexus between Sandra Castilla and Rex Heuermann was a hair that was found and identified through mitochondrial DNA as belonging. Ray Tierney uses the language he couldn't be excluded. That's it's a little confusing, which means basically he was going to be included. Just unbelievable. And guys, I know that every single one of you, including myself, will be pulling up that new bail application document that outlines everything that Rex Heuermann said today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. I know there was a lot of different content creators covering this story today. And I appreciate that you guys chose me to listen to. But this is just so unbelievably earth-shattering, unbelievably interesting that we've learned things today that we did not know. And I think that everyone that watched that everyone that watched that press conference has to now go back and study that bail application document, because he gave us so much information that impossible to digest during the press conference. It's almost like you're a student that needs to take notes in order to read it and to digest all the new evidence they have in the new murders, the two new murders, of course, in Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. At least they're not new murders, but they're new charges for Rex Heuermann. So, folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. Again, thank you so much for tuning in today. We will definitely going back on the air with this case as soon as we really dig through that bail application document. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.